Something is very, very wrong, and the people in charge are running out of places to hide. For months, America has been told a rotating story about one of the most infamous cases of our lifetime, a case that should have been resolved years ago. But instead of answers, we keep getting contradictions, reversals, and claims that fall apart the moment you look at them. And the strangest part? Every one of those contradictions comes from the same small circle of powerful officials who swore they'd give the public the truth. But when you line up what they said, none of it matches. And that's where the real story begins. Because when someone tells you the files don't exist, then says they're on my desk, then claims they were actually written by political rivals, that's not confusion.
And that Donald Trump and our Attorney General come clean to the American people and release the Epstein files. Now, this weekend, Donald Trump said, and I quote, "Let's not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about." Well, Mr. President, a lot of people actually care. And we know that MAGA was all in on Jeffrey Epstein. Now, my Republican colleagues have sent letters, they've posted, they've demanded disclosure. Donald Trump Jr., the president's own son, has tweeted dozens of times about this case. FBI Director Kash Patel swore under oath in front of the Senate that he would be transparent with the American public and release the Epstein files. He said, and I want to quote, "Make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened," that he would do that. That was his quote. Now, in February, our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, told Fox News that Epstein's client list was, again, and I quote, "sitting on my desk right now to review," end quote. Now, they claim there was never a list. And this weekend, Donald Trump claimed that the files were written by Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the Biden administration. These are bizarre reversals. And it's obvious to the American public. Someone is lying, and someone is trying to hide something. So let's look at the facts. We know Elon Musk said publicly on June 5th that Donald Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files. We know that Epstein died in a federal prison overseen by Donald Trump's Department of Justice. We know that Jeffrey Epstein in 2008 was given a generous non-prosecution agreement for sex trafficking charges. Now, that agreement let him continue his criminal activities, and that agreement was offered by Alexandra Acosta, who was Donald Trump's chosen Secretary of Labor. That's not all. We know that Donald Trump and Epstein had a long-standing personal relationship. Epstein told one writer, and I quote, "I was Donald Trump's closest friend for 10 years," end quote. Donald Trump told New York Magazine in 2002, and I want to quote this. Quote, this is Donald Trump. "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. And many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life," unquote. That's disgusting, wrong, and we must inquire more information. The truth is we don't know what the facts are in this case. Now, I can't explain why the Trump administration have changed their minds on Epstein, but their behavior raises questions. This is the time that we must demand answers, and the Oversight Committee is going to do just that. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
That's a cover story cracking in real time. And tonight, you're about to see how the cracks started, who created them, and why they're now impossible to ignore. The deeper you look, the more a single question rises to the surface. If the people with the files have nothing to hide, why are they working this hard to hide them? It all started with one moment that nobody expected. A television studio, a simple question, and an answer that was far too confident to be a mistake. When Pam Bondi looked directly into the camera and said Epstein's client list is sitting on my desk right now, the internet exploded. That wasn't a rumor. That wasn't a leak. That came straight from the country's top law enforcement officer. And for a split second, it felt like the truth was finally coming. She made it sound like the files were there, in her office, waiting to be reviewed. But that moment didn't last long, because weeks later, the story started to shift. Suddenly, that same list supposedly never existed. Then came the next twist. Claims that the files everyone had been waiting for were somehow written by the Obama administration, or Hillary Clinton, or even the Biden team. None of that made sense. Not legally, not logically, and not chronologically. It was a bizarre spiral of excuses that only raised more questions. And the question everyone kept asking was the same. Why is the story changing? Rumors across social media started circulating immediately. Some said the list was politically explosive. Others believed the sudden reversals were a sign that the contents weren't convenient for certain people. And then came the speculation that the files didn't just contain names. They contained timelines, communications, and records powerful individuals hoped would never see daylight. None of these theories were proven, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Something about the story had shifted, and the public felt it. But Bondi wasn't the only one making promises she didn't keep. Months earlier, FBI Director Kash Patel sat under oath and vowed full transparency. He said the American public deserved to know the full weight of what happened. It was a strong statement, almost unusually strong. But those files he promised? Still sealed, still blocked, still unavailable. And every time Patel was asked about the release, he had a new reason, a new delay, a new justification. At first it was ongoing review, then it was coordination, then security concerns, then legal limitations. To the average person, those excuses sounded routine. To people familiar with political investigations, it looked like a stall, a slow walk, a way to push a problem down the road until everyone forgets about it. But this time, people didn't forget. The skepticism only grew stronger when someone outside politics spoke up, someone who didn't have a political angle to protect. On June 5th, Elon Musk made a comment that pulled the entire conversation into the spotlight again. He stated publicly that one extremely powerful individual was mentioned in the files. And instantly, the internet erupted. Whether people like him or not, Musk is known for speaking bluntly. He rarely dances around information. When he dropped that detail, speculation went into overdrive. Why would he say it so directly? How did he know? And if he was telling the truth, why were the files still locked away? Musk's comment didn't prove anything on its own, but it intensified a suspicion the public already had, that the names inside those files weren't nobody. They were people with influence, connections, and reach. The most haunting part came from Epstein himself. In an interview with a writer years ago, he bragged that he was a closest friend to a powerful figure for an entire decade. He loved bragging. He thrived on connections, on access, on the appearance of influence. And he wasn't subtle about it. He told stories to journalists, joked with acquaintances, and dropped hints about the kind of company he kept. And in 2002, one of those acquaintances returned the compliment, describing Epstein as terrific, fun, and someone who liked beautiful women, many of them younger. Those words aged like poison. But that friendship wasn't the most disturbing part of Epstein's past. The real turning point happened in 2008, long before the public even knew the full scope of his crimes. He received a non-prosecution agreement so generous that legal experts were stunned. It protected him from federal charges. It allowed him to continue his activities. It gave him privileges no ordinary person would ever receive. The man who approved that deal, Alexander Acosta, later became a high-ranking official in the Trump administration. The connection between that deal and what happened later haunts the timeline. Again, speculation isn't proof, but it is part of the pattern. And then came the night that changed everything. The night Epstein was found in his cell. The official story said he offed himself. But nothing about that night was normal. Cameras malfunctioned. Guards allegedly fell asleep. Logs were inconsistent. And the public reaction was immediate. This doesn't add up. Online conversations weren't fueled by conspiracy. They were fueled by the fact that the timeline simply didn't make sense. And if that night didn't make sense, what else didn't? All of this pressure, all the unanswered questions, all the contradictions, it finally led to one explosive moment in Congress. A congressman stepped forward and laid out the timeline publicly, Bondi's claim, Patel's promise, Musk's statement, the sudden political reversals, the conflicting stories. The line between fact and fiction was gone, replaced by a fog of excuses and contradictions. His message was simple and direct. Release the files. Stop dodging. Stop blaming past administrations. Stop pretending there's nothing to see. He called it what it looked like, an attempt to bury the truth in political chaos. And for the first time in months, someone with real authority said out loud what millions had been thinking that he reminded everyone that this wasn't about politics. It wasn't about parties or elections. It wasn't about embarrassing anyone. It was about justice. Because the people hurt the most in all of this weren't politicians. They were victims. Women and girls who were preyed on, manipulated, and silenced. Their stories deserve answers, not excuses. Their truth deserves sunlight, not secrecy. But the more you look at this timeline, the harder it becomes to accept the official explanations. Files that exist, then don't exist. Claims made, then denied. Commitments made, then abandoned. High-ranking officials who can't keep their story straight. A system that moves fast when it wants to, but moves impossibly slow when the truth risks exposing something bigger. And that's where the story leaves us. Not with answers, but with a crossroads. Either the files are released, and the public sees the truth, or the contradictions continue, and the distrust grows. Because nothing fuels suspicion like secrecy. And nothing destroys public trust like shifting stories from the people who promised the truth. The American people deserve more than vague excuses. They deserve accountability, transparency, and honesty. Whether the files contain explosive revelations or mundane details, releasing them is the only way to shut down speculation and restore trust. The victims deserve closure. The country deserves answers. And anyone trying to bury the truth deserves to be questioned. If you believe transparency matters, if you believe victims deserve justice, and if you want more deep dives like this into the stories the powerful try to bury, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell so you never miss the updates. The truth always comes out eventually, and we'll be here when it does.